Test 1, 2, 3.
Good afternoon and welcome to the March 1st, 2017 Legal and Finance meeting. And we will start out with roll call and determination of quorum. Here. Thank you. Now we're on to adoption of agenda. We have a motion to move in a second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Now we're on to general public comment. I have no general public comment speaker forms. Anybody in the audience? So I will open and close it. We will go to consent items, item 1 through 8, and we will open public comment. Don't have any. I will close public comment, and we'll move on to approve the items 1 through 8. And Steve Lorente, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to pull items 5, 7, and 8.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else, so if I would have a motion. Have a motion to approve the balance, and we will go to item number 5. Oh, yep, we need to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5. Acknowledge 2016 annual financial report. And I will go to Steve Lorente.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to make the motion to continue this item to the March 29th Legal and Finance meeting.
Second.
That would be it.
We have a motion to continue to March 29th and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 7, authorize mayor and finance officer to sign second amended contract for construction of public improvements through private developer tax increment district number 38 between Heartland Retail Center LLC and Rapid City. And Mr. Lorente, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess I want to talk about this first, see where the interest is, but there was some discussion and some votes against this at TIF committee level. Wasn't that? Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you, Pauline. Keep me on the straight and narrow. I appreciate it. And I wanted to just let my colleagues know that, and I would support it. One of the problems we had with this was, well, there were multiple. The developers had finalized their costs in 2012, and yet and yet still here we are. Part of the problem we have. Chair, if I could ask the finance officer a question.
I think you better.
Pauline, can you clarify which one Steve's talking about, Councilman Laurenti's talking about? Because if it's not on the agenda and I thought this was it, I'm going to just be very quiet.
So the reason why this is confusing is because it's the same developer basically on both TID 38 and 54. I believe both of them, though, had votes against them, and TID 38 was actually denied by the TID committee, but it went through Planning Commission and it was approved to go ahead and approve the project plan. TID 54 is the one that I showed, well, going back to TID 38, back when I started in 2007, I was trying to get them to finalize certification. They're just now doing it. TID 54 was a 2012 one. It also had 2 no votes in TID committee, but that one hasn't been to Planning Commission yet because the overall vote was to approve that.
So one more question, and this is one of the things that came up at TIF committee level for my colleagues to hear, is some of the consternation was that we are reauthorizing these TIFs and reallocations, And we have new fees that they want to include for professional services because they've redesigned it, because it hasn't been developed yet. So some of the problem was that some of the committee was not wanting to support it because of that fact, because the taxpayers were already on the hook once for a design of the entire development, and they did not want to see the taxpayers, because that's ultimately who supports these developments while they're under the TIF until the TIF is completely paid off. So that was some of the votes that were against these, was the fact that we were still including some new professional services that the taxpayers have already been on the hook for when it was originally approved. And so if there's support, I would support it and second it. If one of my colleagues wanted to reduce or remove professional services, because I don't believe the taxpayers should pay again. There are other TIFs that we've had during the same time period where those developments have been done and they're completed. And so here we are, though, with this one, and we're reallocating and allowing some of these new expenses, and I don't believe that we should. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lorente. Councilwoman Scott, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask the finance officer a question, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So, Pauline, yeah, it's on, but it's not on. So Pauline, thank you. Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Pauline, on this, I'm trying to catch up here because we were talking about two different TIDs that came through committee. Did you say that item number 7, which is TID District 38, went through the TIF committee, went through Planning Commission, and this is the first time it's coming to council?
No, the project plan has already been amended. This is just the developer's agreement to be amended to coincide with the new amended project plan. So basically, this just finalizes the reallocation that was requested and approved through Planning Commission and Council.
So based on Alderman Laurenti's discussion about excluding something from this, I'm just trying to figure out the procedure here. Since the City Council as a whole already approved the amendment to the TID, and this is supposed to finalize that, do we still have it within our power to go ahead and line item and exclude some of these service items?
I would defer that one to the attorney.
Mr. Chair, may I?
You may.
Thank you. Joel, can you kind of help us out here? Is this just a formality that has to happen since the City Council already took action? Or is it still open for discussion as far as line items being removed or added or modified within this contract?
You know, I want to consider that a little bit. I think because the contract hasn't been amended, you've paved the way for it by amending the tax increment district. But the finance officer and I discussed this briefly the other day, and I haven't had a chance to look at it. But the developer wouldn't necessarily be entitled to those funds if until you approve the amendment to the contract. So I don't think it is just necessarily a formality. I know we have kind of treated that way in the past, that once that decision was made on the tax increment district and the agreement came forward, we would just approve it to match the tax increment district. But if it increases the amount of interest that ultimately pay, I think we do have an ability to look at it and decide whether or not, if say the developer refinances it at higher interest rate, say no, we're not going to reimburse that potentially.
Thank you, Joel. Based on that latest information, I don't think I'm prepared to make a decision today. So if I had to vote on this, it would be an outright no, because that's the way I vote when I'm uncertain of things. So I would entertain a motion from any of my colleagues to continue this one to the next Legal and Finance Committee meeting so that we can maybe get some better information or better understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Modrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I'm on, maybe. All right, who do I want to ask here? I think I will go to Pauline if I could, sir. All right. So Pauline, in looking over this, because we did do a first amendment on this, and at that point it was shared with us that we were only in a real allocation, working from within the funds, And that at that point, I believe there was a question asked, are there any other funds being requested? And it was flatline reallocation. And that's why I believe the council went forward and we're in second reading. So what you're saying, perhaps in this new alignment of what they're requesting, is they've added professional services, and so therefore it's not reallocation. It's an amendment for more funding?
No, it's still, the total project costs have not changed in totality, but where it's allocated on the line item, that's what has changed. The second, where it says second amendment, this is the second amendment to the developers agreement because it's the second time they've amended the project plan.
So so it started in 2003, amended in 2004?
I can't
On the
remember
documents
when.
that we have on here? And then now we're trying to close this out. So we're just going through final detail now, and what we're seeing on our line items that isn't justified is the professional services, and that's all you see in here?
I guess I'm not even looking at that at this point. The reallocation was approved in the project plan. And I believe they took some, and I would have to pull up that agenda item, but they took some interest, reallocated it to a project line item, or they didn't do a project, and so that was reallocated to different line items. That's typically what happens in the reallocation. But the total, say it was a $4 million TID to start with, it's still a $4 million TID. It's how we're spending the money towards it.
So then on other TIDs and such, when they come back to close out, had there been line item professional services in those in the past?
Yes, they've had them in the past. Sometimes the amount is low, and I don't know off the top of my head if the amount was low or if they just added it or separated it out from the construction costs. That I can't tell you with going back to the previous information.
And if it is a reallocation, are we able to justify it with the invoicing of those professional services?
Patsy's still working on that.
Okay. That's all at the moment.
Thank you. Alderwoman Scott, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to continue this to the next Legal and Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have no one else in the queue. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 8, authorize mayor and finance officer to sign third assessment or assignment agreement for tax increment district number 38 between the City of Rapid City, Heartland Retail Center LLC, and Core Trust Bank. Mr. Laurenti, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll also make a motion to continue this particular item to the next Legal and Finance meeting on March 15th.
Alderwoman Modrick, you have the floor.
Thank you. So with the motion that we have on the floor, then, are we directing staff to provide us anything in order to be able to review this properly, since we're doing a continuation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In order to answer Alderwoman Modrick's question, the reason we're continuing this is that according to the finance director, the reconciliation of the project costs are still underway and not quite finalized yet. So we're just giving an additional 2 weeks and keep it in committee until we can get that reconciled.
Thank you, both alderwomen. And I believe we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We will go on to non-consent items, item 9 through 11, and I will open public comment. I don't have anybody. I don't see anybody jumping up and down waving their arms, so I will close that. And we will go to item number 9. This is an item for myself. This was the discussion on the vision funds continued from February 15th, 2017 Legal and Finance Committee meeting and February 6th, 2017 City Council meeting. Alderwoman Scott, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that this is still under discussion, so I'd like to make a motion to acknowledge the discussion and retain the floor if I
Yes.
can.
Second.
So I know this is still under discussion, and there are some pieces, and the city attorney did provide some guidance as far as what the steps are, and the steps are really integrated between the mayor and what the city council can do. So I know this is an ongoing discussion, but rather than keep this on an agenda to just have more discussion, I'd like to go ahead and just acknowledge it, and we'll bring it back up when we've got a clear path of where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Scott. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Item 10 from the Finance Department, second reading and recommendation of ordinance number 6156, an ordinance repealing Chapter 1.08 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to wards and precincts and adopting a new revised Chapter 1.08 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Item 11 from the City Attorney's Office, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6167, an ordinance narrowing the municipal licensing requirements for ambulances by amending section 5.16.010 and 5.16.020 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And Mr. Wright, you have the floor.
I understand it, I believe, but if the assistant chief could maybe just brief us on the details. This is for transport, correct?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's for the transportation business. It's for the ambulance service. The original ordinance was written many years ago, and it was designed to give the exclusivity to the ambulance contract to the private provider, which then shifted to us as the public safety division, as fire department, when we do all the transport. So that's what it was designed to do. The way the ordinance was written, think it leaves it open a little bit too broad. And so this is designed to narrow it down to be very specific to an ambulance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. And we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. If I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.